Ever wonder what it's like to achieve greatness? Well, we talked to Laird Hamilton, pioneering big wave surfer, and here's what he said.
There's always stories about me telling people I was going to be the greatest, and they just tell me, please shut up.
And his story only gets better from there. You can listen to the full story on our other podcast, This New Economy. Just search This New Economy in iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Or measuring goals. But in the last 5 years, I've set OKRs as a biz dev lead, as a product manager on a couple of different products, and then more recently in my time as a partner at Google Ventures.
So today we're going to dive into how you can use the same techniques that Google and Intel have used to scale their businesses in the form of KPIs and OKRs. We're going to learn what they mean. You're going to hear stories about how they can change the trajectory of your business and figure out which one is the best for you. Welcome to Rocketship.fm. Podcast where we explore startups from funding to growth, from culture to sales, and everything in between. I'm Michael Sacca.
And I'm Joelle Goldman. So to break it down, a KPI really is just a data point. It stands for Key Performance Indicator. And really all that means is that it's one piece of data that you're tracking that you're going to use to measure yourself against a larger goal and see if you're achieving those larger objectives. OKR stands for Objective and Key Results. So I was talking with Kevin Lee over at Buffer, and he explained it in a way that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I guess literally it's an objective and key result. What it means for us is kind of just this way of keeping each other accountable for what we set out to achieve at the start of a quarter. It's a tool that we use to stay focused on what we identify as being useful goals to have when we start a quarter. And it's a way to kind of follow up and see what kind of success we were able to achieve and what we learned throughout the quarter, given this framework and this foundation that we kind of set off toward.
And what that means is you're basically setting a big aspirational goal. That's the objective piece. And the key results are the measurable steps that are going to help you get to that big goal. OKRs are typically kind of future and forward looking, whereas KPIs are measuring the things you're doing right now. And so the way I see it, you can have a KPI on its own, but you can't have OKRs without KPIs.
Interesting. So it sounds like a KPI would be, say, the amount of revenue we bring in each month, and we might set a goal to increase that by 5 or 10%. Whereas an OKR would be, we want to enter a new market vertical, and these are the different points with which we're going to measure it in order to get to that objective.
Right.
I don't know if this metaphor works either. I was thinking an objective could be like a meal, like dinner or breakfast or lunch. And a key result could be a part of that meal. So a sandwich or a waffle or a steak. And then a KPI could be an ingredient that goes into one of those dishes. So flour or sugar or salt or something like that.
So we're going to start with KPIs, and we're going to go through how a company like Prezi uses them internally.
We've talked about this in other episodes. There's so much data at our fingertips, and there's so many things we can track that it's actually a lot harder to get down to the 2 or 3 things that high level are going to be the most impactful for you to focus on. And so figuring out what KPIs to track is actually a lot more difficult than figuring out how to track them.
And we grabbed a lot of this information from the article, How to Set Your KPIs by Andras Balug, who was a former data analyst at Prezi. We did reach out for an interview, but we couldn't get anything scheduled in time. Prezi had a couple good rules on how they set KPIs. The first being it had to be tightly connected to the company's strategy. So if it's not, it was not a KPI that they would track. It needed to represent actual usage in the app. So there had to be data tied to the KPI that was trackable and actionable. And then for Prezi, not necessarily you, but for them, they wanted everything to include retention, because that was the big problem they were trying to solve. So they based all their KPIs around user retention with the overarching goal of make something people want.
So what's an example of a KPI that might indicate an improvement in retention?
So we have a couple right off the bat, right? We have returning users. We have how often people use it each month. And then financially, you can look at churn, which is how long are they subscribing for? When do they cancel? Or are they upgrading and growing further into the product? And actually, how Prezi approaches it is they walked right through their user acquisition funnel. So one of the first metrics that they tracked was user signups. And then once they got that number to a point where they were happy with it, they went one step deeper into the funnel. So for a KPI, it should be a goal that you have of a single metric to improve. And you want to focus on only a couple of these in a given time period so that you can properly measure and you can properly have enough time to make a well-informed decision. Now, KPIs are very kind of data-heavy, data-driven, and very focused on the now. So I asked Thomas Knoll of Reverie what he had worked with KPIs or OKRs and what his general opinion of them was.
I mean, we've done KPIs, but I don't know. KPIs are just an acronym for a thing, and OKRs is a process. So you can do OKRs, you can't do KPIs. So I think that's why it's effective.
So which one is better for you? But we're going to dive into OKRs right after a word from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by CloudSponge. CloudSponge allows you to leverage your users' networks to grow your business.
So where is CloudSponge? Like what apps and services might I have used where I actually have used CloudSponge?
Yeah, so Airbnb, Yelp, you've probably funded a GoFundMe campaign at some point.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so those all leverage CloudSponge, and it all uses it as a mechanic for growth inside of the app.
Well, I'm getting hungry right now, and actually Yelp is like my, go-to app whenever I'm trying to try something new. So how would I have used it inside of Yelp?
So as you know, Yelp has this social network component. So they want to send you notifications when one of your friends recommends a spot.
hey, I trust my friends. So yeah, I'm always looking for that.
This helps with user engagement and gets you coming back to the Yelp app. Inside of your profile, there's a Find Your Friends feature. And in that feature, you can connect your, Gmail address book, find friends from Hotmail, etc. And so they take your address book and then they compare that to who's on Yelp.
Okay, so I have definitely used Cloud Sponge then before because I've definitely done that.
Yeah. So they gave all listeners a special offer. You get 3 free months extended trial to try out Cloud Sponge, see if it works for you, see if you can create growth inside of your app. So go to cloudsponge.com/rocketship and claim the special offer. Now, back to the show.
So OKRs are about the big thinking, the big idea. With setting an objective, you're picking a big goal that's ambitious. Some people say it should feel a little bit uncomfortable. You're pushing those limits of what you think you can achieve. And the key results are the measurable pieces, like the KPIs. They're the measurable pieces that help you step by step achieve that goal.
It's kind of like when Kim and I first got married. We were really young and we didn't have a budget.
Here's Thomas Knoll outlining what it's like to start OKRs for the first time.
We just paid for things and we'd run out of money and then we got to slow down for the next couple of days and then, get another paycheck and okay, let's just go do whatever. And we always stayed alive and did okay. And then we did a budget and all of a sudden it was how are we staying alive and being okay? Because when we fill in the blanks on this budget and measure exactly what's coming in and what's going out, all of a sudden it's there's no way this should be working and life feels a whole lot harder all of a sudden. So I think the first time setting up OKRs, the biggest thing that the result is it can feel really frustrating because all of a sudden you're constantly looking at progress towards some of these objectives that you have that are very measurable. And so you have reporting set up to get that measurement out on a regular basis.
So while we were doing the research for this article, one of the things I found really interesting that I didn't know was that when you set an OKR, you can set an OKR for the entire company. This becomes your mission statement. This is your big, lofty goal that you want to hit. And then underneath that, you build multiple other OKRs per division, and then even per employee or team member.
Right. And the key thing is that these are quantifiable, that you can measure these steps so that big goal you set isn't so fluffy, that you actually can work towards it.
Step 1, you need to set an objective. We hit 70% of the goal that we set.
You're not supposed to be getting all 100s up and down the line. You should be kind of hitting around 70%, because if you're hitting all 100s, you will never know how much bigger, further, longer you could have gotten on that objective, because it's human nature to kind of slow down when you get to the finish line.
And so what this does is it helps to have those tough conversations. So you can say, we wanted to get here, but we got 70% of the way there. What would make up that 30%? What could we do slightly better? And when you force those hard conversations, you get the answers and the ideas that you need in order to achieve a goal that big. If you're setting OKRs where you're just hitting 100% every time, you're not aiming high enough. And you're also not forcing those hard conversations about how to get better. Now, we found a use case from Blogger, who was acquired by Google, and they had an objective of improving bloggers' reputation. So how did they break that down?
So their big idea, improving their retention, not necessarily measurable, right? But the key things that they set out to affect that big idea, those were things like reestablish bloggers' leadership by speaking at 3 industry events. So that's something you can literally check off a list.
Then they wanted to coordinate their 10th birthday party with PR efforts. Now, a little bit looser, but it's a specific action that can be achieved. Then they wanted to ID and reach out to the top 10 blogger users. So it's got a number. You can measure it. You either miss it or you hit it.
Another thing they wanted to do was set up an @blogger account on Twitter and regularly participate in these blogger discussions. And again, that's something measurable, and you can even break it down further by saying things like, I want to participate in X discussions a week, and then you can check that off a list that it's done. And by doing these measurable things, at the end, you can look back when everything's completed and say, okay, I've completed everything on the list. Did it affect the larger goal?
So if they had a company-wide goal of improving bloggers' reputation, they can then take that goal and break it down by department.
Your social media team has a set of, 10 things that they want to accomplish in that quarter that are going to be different 10 things than your sales team might want to accomplish. But if they're all working towards that same goal, you're across the board, your team is working together to achieve something.
And this is how big organizations move collectively. This is the power of the OKR system, because now you have one company-wide objective that's broken down into division-wide objectives, which is broken down into employee-specific objectives, all with key results backing it up at each level to measure the success of, are we, say, improving our reputation? So, Joelle, what are some other tips that we need in order to implement OKRs?
Okay, so all this time we've been talking about how the larger goal, the big objective, the O in the OKR, that's not necessarily measurable, but everything underneath it is. So those KPIs, those key results, you've been measuring those things all along, working towards this larger goal. But there has to be some way to know if you've hit that goal or if you've come pretty close, and if so, how close. And so there's a grading system that has been kind of put in place to help you decide how close you've really come to that goal. And so here's how that works.
So you have lots of key results, so maybe 3 to 4 or 5 key results for every objective. Each of the key results is graded on a scale of 0 to 1. And there's different ways of looking at that. It could be if you set out to grow your email subscribers by 20,000 last quarter and you grew them by 10,000, you would score yourself a 0.5 for that key result. So kind of like the percentage of how far you got. Sometimes there's some binary key results you might set. So ship this thing by whatever date. And did you do it or did you not do it? So it's either a 0 or a 1. So you take all those key result scores for an objective and you average them out, and then that becomes the objective score on a scale of 0 to 1. And then you have 3 to 5 objectives. So each of those now has its own score. So you average the scores for all those to come up with your overall score, again, which is a 0 to 1
So
scale.
how many OKRs should you be focused on at a given time?
Google sets it at 4 to 6 tops per quarter so that you're really focused on just a couple big goals that you're trying to achieve.
So why would you start OKRs right now? Maybe you're 2 or 3 people. Maybe you just scaled to 40 or 150 employees. Why would you start using OKRs today if you're not already? I think one of the most important pieces of OKRs is gets everyone motivated around the same goal, and it helps to formulate the company language and focus. And it's amazing what you can do when you have 3 or 40 or 150 people all focused on the same goal. So whether you choose to implement OKRs or KPIs, important thing is that you're using data to back up and work towards a goal and to measure your performance and continually improve. We're not going to get it right the first time, but we will get it right eventually. We will get it right by going with our gut, setting a goal and backing it up with data. It's a winning combination every single time. Huge thanks to segment.com for underwriting this series and allowing us to bring this content to you. So go to segment.com/rocketship and get $300 off of their team plan. You'll be joining the likes of some amazing companies that already use Segment, Product Hunt, Instacart, Crate and Barrel, Trunk Club, Lending Tree, and the list goes on and on. So go to segment.com/rocketship and check it out. Stay tuned on Sunday. We have a great interview with Derek Harris of Mesosphere. And then next Wednesday, we're doing a whole episode dedicated to how companies use data in weird and interesting ways. When we were researching this, I found some of the most incredible stories, and I can't wait to share them with you because I think you're going to be really inspired after hearing them. Follow us on Twitter at rocketship.fm. Follow me at Michael Sacco and Joelle at Joelle Goldman. If you haven't yet, leave us a review. You've already listened this far. Just go ahead. Give us 5 stars on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm not going to judge. And subscribe. Subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. All right, we'll see you back here in just a couple days. So you've made it all the way to the end, so I bet you want some free Rocketship FM and This New Economy stickers. Well, it's easy. All you have to do is go to This New Economy or Rocketship.fm's show page, or even both if you're feeling ambitious, and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Screenshot it and email it to team@rocketship.fm, and I'll personally put them in the mail for you.